Belgium inaugurated a square named after Patrice Lumumba. But why was it so controversial? First, let's briefly establish who Patrice Lumumba was without going into too much details. You see, the man was the first prime minister of DRC, but on January 17, 1961, he was brutally assassinated with the involvement of Belgium, the United States, and other Western powers. But we must also include the local authorities who voluntarily participated in his execution. You see, in my village, they say, if the tree had known what the axe had in mind, it would have never helped with the handle. Now, if you know the story, then you know exactly who I'm referring to. So, in 2018, when the Lumumba Memorial was inaugurated, an estimated 300 to 350 people attended, but it was surprisingly a small turnout, given the size of Congolese and African population in Brussels and Belgium in general. I mean, I have seen more people fill concert venues for African artists, but this is a legendary Congolese and African icon. So the question becomes, why so few people showed up? Look, we may never know the answer, but your guess is as good as mine. Now, initially, it was alleged that the mayor of Brussels had stated a statue would be erected. However, years later, his press office stated there were no plans to build one. So instead, a memorial plaque was offered in an area known for its many African businesses, commonly known as Matongé, the African Quarter. And the name comes from a vibrant neighborhood in the Congolese capital city, Kinshasa. Now, since both cities are part of the places I once lived, I was quite surprised to learn where the plaque would be placed in Brussels for two reasons. But the second one is controversial, and the first one was because it was a taxi rank and a subway station when I lived there. And the last time I was there, nothing had changed. Yes, I did go to check. I had to make sure that an African freedom fighter whose life was unjustly taken for his conviction is commemorated at a taxi rank. That speaks volumes. You see, Patrice Lumumba's speech before the Belgian king in Kinshasa on June 30, 1960, on Congolese Independence Day, is widely regarded as the thing that sealed his faith. That speech was the final nail in a coffin prepared in the darkness by a cocktail of Western and national powers who wanted him to rest in it in pieces and not in peace. Because after being tortured and executed by a firing squad, his remains were dismembered and dissolved in acid by two Belgian officers on orders from their superiors. But I've always wondered if this wasn't part of a ritual, given the length of savagery they went to in making sure he was gone. However, in the year 2000, in a display of sadistic pride expected from a career criminal, one of the Belgian officers who dismembered Patrice Lumumba's body bragged on national television about possessing his teeth, showcasing it with a grotesque pride like a trophy. But 22 years later, Belgium returned the tooth of Patrice Lumumba to DRC. Yet, Belgium described it as a symbolic gesture because no DNA test was conducted to confirm its authenticity. So we don't actually know whose tooth was given to Congo. Now let's address the controversy. You see, from the Patrice Lumumba Square, where the plaque is located, you can clearly see the towering statue of King Leopold, aka the Butcher of Congo. And it's just about 5 minutes walk, standing imposingly on the other side of the road, guarding one of the gates of the Royal Belgium Palace. Look, it's like Belgium was saying, we'll give you a symbolic plaque at a taxi rank, but the king's grand statue will remain because you must understand that the king is still our hero. And it's not just statues. King Leopold is glorified through street names in Brussels and Belgium. You see, It was through Congolese natural and human resources that the Butcher of Congo redirected Belgium's path, and in doing so redefined its place in the world. Therefore, Belgium will forever be grateful to him. That's just basic mathematics, and it's only logical from their standpoints to honor their king who took them out of darkness by committing one of the worst crimes ever known to mankind. So, if we refuse to understand, not accept, but understand their why, then nothing will ever make sense. And that's why in 2022, when the Belgian king visited DRC, he expressed regret for the country's colonial past, but did not apologize. Listen, I believe Africa at this point in history should no longer entertain or welcome apologies. We must outgrow this nonsense full of empty gesture and symbolism. Instead, we must only be demanding in one voice reparation, restitution, and later compensation. Why? Reparation to repair the damage done, restitution to return all the stolen goods and artifacts, and compensation to pay for the loss. That's it. But as Africans, we should not ask or beg Belgium or any other nation under the sun to apologize for its past or remove statues in their own countries, especially when we haven't even begun decolonizing our minds through our own education systems and more. Look, we've been around this earth long enough to understand that there is no amount of begging or pleading that can make someone respect you. It's either you impose respect or refuse to accept anything less. But if you do neither, the world fingers will be all over you like a brand new iPad in the village.
We, ni nini?